Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. For the union makes us strong. Now they have taken untold millions. They never toiled to earn. But without our brain and muscle, not a single wheel could turn. We can break their haughty power, gain our freedom when we learn that the union makes us strong. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever. Solidarity forever.
For a worker in the Nash Motors plant in Kenosha in early 1933, life was full of uncertainties. Just because you punched your time card and reported to your job on the line did not mean you were getting paid. On any given day, you might sit and wait for a few hours for the line to start up. While you waited, you received no pay. It all started in 1916, when Charles Nash bought the Jeffrey Company of Kenosha, Wisconsin. The 1,000 men working the plant in the early days were a mixed group ethnically. The plant expanded quickly in the 20s. By 1928, the plant was turning out 138,000 cars a year. But then, with the stock market crash, the Great Depression began, and production fell dramatically. In 1929, thousands of Nash workers were laid off, while those still working rarely got in a full week. The conditions were such that the worker had little choice but to organize.
Conditions were horrible. You worked on the car, maybe two on each side. You finished that particular station, and then you had to push the car to the next station, and then four people would be doing, and then the next station.
The foreman held absolute power over each worker's job, having full authority to hire and fire. The foreman was free to fire workers on the spot for any reason or for no reason.
In the beginning, before the union, there was no such thing as call-in pay. I remember days when we'd have to go to report at 7 o'clock in the morning and not get a nickel for 4, 5, 6 hours until that car came past your position. You did your job and moved on. There was no guarantee of so many hours at the beginning of the day.
As early as 1920, Nash workers attempted to act together to improve their lot. In that year, trimmers in the finishing department walked off their jobs demanding a 10% raise. When the assembly line stopped, a red bulb lit up in Charlie Nash's office. He personally came out to the finishing department and responded to the workers' demands by telling the men that the only way to get a 10% raise was to work 10% harder.
Then the Depression fell upon us, and the money that you made working at the Nash was far, far short of what was needed for decent living.
In 1933, Felix Olkives, the president of the Kenosha Trades and Labor Council, targeted the 3,000 workers in the Nash plant to organize. In an attempt to build support, there was a Labor Day march up 60th Street. In 1933, enough workers had signed up with the union for the American Federation of Labor to issue a charter to the Nash Group.
You have no idea the intensity of fear that prevailed in that plant. Of fear of the boss finding out that you were listening to the radical labor leader, and it would all go back again. If you don't like it here, we got 300 people in the office. You always got to say that. So that created fear. Wages were so miserable, so low, conditions were so miserable that you didn't care whether that plant opened or closed. You fought back. You can only stand so much of this nagging at home. We haven't got enough money. We haven't got enough money for our food. You know, that a worker becomes, what the hell? Let's go. We're complaining about conditions. We were complaining about division of work. We were complaining about the low wage and everything. And we asked for relief from the foreman. And no response forthcoming. And then we report to our people and says, look, nobody wants to talk to us. So there's only one thing we could do, is shut her down.
The Kenosha Nash sit-down strike was one of the first in auto history. Workers at other corporations, such as General Motors, used the same technique almost 4 years later to gain union recognition.
At 4 o'clock, the final assembly marches out in a unit, 330 people. And to our surprise, we find 1,000 or more people waiting for us in the parking lot across from the office of Nash. And they hooray, 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 you know, and everything else. And so, and Mr. Oakhive was there to meet us. And that night, there was open mass meeting for everybody that worked at Nash at the Italian American Hall. And he signed up over 1,000 cards at that meeting.
1 week later, Nash relented and came to an agreement. He verbally agreed to recognize collective bargaining, bargain with the committee elected by the workers, and not to discriminate against any of the strikers. A little over 1 year later, Kenosha, Racine, and Milwaukee went on strike March 1st, 1934, for 7 weeks. On April 11th, 1934, Nash President E.H. McCary signed a one-paragraph statement formalizing the agreement. That paragraph represents the first written contract for auto workers in the Kenosha plant. Pursuing their goal of a national auto workers union, representatives of Local 19,008 went to Detroit in 1934 for the first auto workers convention. Delegates from Kenosha helped lead the fight for an elected leadership for the new union. On November 8, 1935, Local 19,008 was rechartered as AFL UAW Local 72. Local 72 contributed greatly to the defense effort. The war years also saw a major advance for Local 72 members with the end of the piece rate system in the plant. In 1944, after a decade of resistance, all jobs finally became paid by hourly rates. There was also a big change in employment brought on by the war. During the war years, there was a tremendous increase in the number of women workers in the plant. For the first time, women held elected offices within the union. By the early 60s, there were many problems that members of Local 72 had to face and work out. Two of the main problems involved automation and retiming of jobs by AMC's new industrial engineers. Many jobs were lost due to the introduction of automated machinery, especially in the motor division. In 1965, a strike was called by a 93% majority following local elections. The strike lasted for 3 weeks. By 1961, Local 72 had found its new home and moved to the largest union hall in Kenosha, Wisconsin, which is its present headquarters.
Local 72 has a very diverse workforce. Historically, American Motors had hired more women than GM or Ford or Chrysler had. We also have a very large number of Afro-Americans and Hispanics working in the plant.
Local 72 took an active role in the civil rights movements of the 1950s. As the years went on, many African-American members held positions as stewards, chief stewards, committee members, and board members.
Local 72 has always been, I think you would say, ahead of the general community in terms of our commitment to civil rights and our commitment to equal rights. If you go back into the 60s, Local 72 was demonstrating in favor of integration in the South back in those days. In the 60s, there was a growing awareness throughout society, but also in Local 72 about the rights of minorities. I'm very proud of the fact that Local 72 was the first local in the auto industry to negotiate a paid day off in honor of Martin Luther King. And I'm also very proud of the fact that each year for the past 14 years we have held a program that's open to the community to honor Dr. Martin Luther King, and that has really grown into the premier civil rights event in southeastern Wisconsin with over 1,000 people attending each year.
Women members of Local 72 began to receive more respect during the 50s. In 1956, the always active Education Committee offered a special institute for the 1,000 women in the membership. The Women's Institute featured speakers on unionism and labor history. In 1958, discrimination against both single and married women in terms of seniority finally came to an end. The late 70s and early 80s were a difficult time for many Local 72 members with rising unemployment. AMC's aging product ceased to be competitive in the marketplace, so that by 1982, almost 4,500 members were laid off indefinitely. The government-owned French automaker Renault bought 46% of the company, producing a joint venture.
And so I ran for president in 1984. And we immediately commenced an effort to get the state to assist the company in building a new facility and bringing new product in, because the plant was very old and American Motors did not really have the capital for a new product. Renault was looking for a way to pull out of the United States. And we had the state agreeing to spend considerable amount of money to help bring a new product here. And then, of course, that all changed when Chrysler bought American Motors Renault. Now, Chrysler had promised us 5 years production on two models of car, the M body, the large car, and the L body, the small car. 6 months after they made that promise, they broke their commitment and announced they were going to close the assembly plant, the stamping plant, and the engine plant shortly after that. The strategy that we used to try and fight that was a public campaign exposing Lee Iacocca's duplicity and broken agreements. We became part of the Chrysler Council and enlisted the aid of the Chrysler Council in helping us keep the engine plant open. Lee Iacocca said that we had negotiated the most expensive plant closing agreement in the history of the auto industry, and he and the International costed that at $250 million. And we did that by threatening legal action, by threatening strike action if needed, and by making the right alliances within the International Union to get their support in putting new product in here. So Lee Iacocca closed our plant, but in the closing he invested $1.2 billion, and we're still here. And Lee Iacocca's gone.
The American Motors plant was a magnet for people looking for jobs all over the country.
Well, I started at American Motors Corporation in 1959, fresh right out of high school. I moved here from Michigan, where there were no jobs, really no prospects for jobs. I knew some friends over here, and several friends of mine and I jumped on the car ferry out of Ludington, Michigan, landed in Milwaukee, and took the North Shore train to Kenosha, where we all applied for jobs, and I guess in a matter of 2 or 3 weeks, we were all hired. And I think I'm the only one that stayed around, and I've been at the plant ever since.
Over the years, Local 72 has lent a hand and helped the community in many ways.
This local union has historically done many things in the community. We helped found the first blood bank in southeastern Wisconsin, the Kenosha Blood Bank. Local 72 helped start the Community Chest, which later became the United Way, and helped many people in this community. Local 72 was very instrumental in gaining the votes that were needed to put the University of Wisconsin Parkside in Kenosha County.
After the assembly plant closing, the union looked for ways to secure the future for their members by initiating a Product Quality Improvement Partnership, or PQI. Union members supported this new program as a way to directly affect the environment they work in and the quality of the products they produce.
One of the things that we did after Chrysler closed the assembly and the stamping plants in 1988 was we realized that in order to have a chance for the engine plant to survive, that we needed to get involved in improving the quality of the product that we build. And, you know, that's not a real new idea. I think auto workers everywhere and auto workers here have always wanted to build a quality product. And I think if people are given the proper tools, given the proper methods and the proper time to do their job, they're going to build a quality product.
And we try through the Product Quality Improvement Partnership to empower workers to use all their abilities. And there are fringe benefits to that. In the old days, managers treated the workers very badly, and there was constant turmoil. When you tell a worker that you want them to contribute all their abilities to the productive process, you have to treat them with dignity. Walter Reuther always said, we never organized the union just for 10 cents more an hour. We organized for dignity on the job.
And I think in our relationship with management, we have identified some areas where we have common ground, building a quality product. We agree that we're interested in doing that, both of us. Providing training for the workforce. We're both interested in doing that. So there's areas where, you know, we have common ground, and there are programs in the Chrysler contract that recognize that there are certain joint activities that are beneficial to both sides. And we, you know, work very hard to make those areas successful. But I think one of the other things we have recognized and has been crucial to our success, that we're still the union and they're still the company. And there's some areas where we don't have common ground. And our job is to represent our members. And if we can't agree with management, then we have to do that.
There's a lot of strengths to this union. Our leadership, I think, is our basic strength. We've been touted, if I could use that word, as one of the last strongholds, so to speak. We've been fortunate. We've had union-minded people and that knew what they were doing, and we've had the best. We fought long and hard for, and by we I mean the union, fought long and hard for the benefits and things like that.
I think the strengths of it come from a couple different things. One, definitely the leadership. Two, probably the people. You had more people willing to do more things for this union than I've ever seen in any organization anywhere. I believe they don't teach it in high school, they don't teach it in grade school, they don't teach it anywhere. And unless you have a father or a brother or sister or some family member that works in a union, they don't understand. I mean, most people think, oh, a union. All they do is hold up the company for this and hold up the company for that and go on strike and want more than they got coming. You know, they don't understand that, you know, the only reason the things were given to the people, the wages, the insurance, any of the benefits, was because of the people that are working there. So unless they had some direct dealing with somebody that's in unions, I don't think people understand what a union does or, you know, what it's supposed to do.
And, you know, we're in an era now where it's been much more difficult for people to organize unions. And I think, you know, if people look at what has happened here and look at the way Local 72 has conducted its affairs, I think it's a very good advertisement for unions. And I'm real proud of that.
Solidarity forever.